In our previous video, we discussed the basic structure of a cell, and we began at the introduction where we realized that a cell has functions, and these particular functions define the work performed by specific cells for that reason. Now, we defined a cell as the basic structural and functional unit of living organisms. Notice it is wrong to use the word life with that respect. Now, we won't go back to the introduction we gave, but probably we can remind ourselves that the basic cell will have several parts like the nucleus and the cell membrane and the cytoplasm. It will have the nucleus, it will have the cytoplasm, and it will also have a membrane. These are very basic. In the nucleus, this is where all activities are controlled in a cell. In the cytoplasm, there are suspended structures that performs various functions for a cell. And then the membrane is important because it allows substances to move in and out of a cell. Now, if we go forward and look at how the two basic structures of cells, we are going to see a plant and an animal cell. We all know that most parts of a plant will appear green, and maybe particularly that's one of the biggest differences we have between animal and plant cells. And as you can see from this diagram, the plant cell appears different from the animal cell. The animal cell takes a certain coloration of almost red, appearing because of the blood, and this one appears more green because of the fact that there is chlorophyll inside the particular cell. So the basic plant cell will have such an appearance, and the first important part that we have seen previously is the nucleus. Nucleus controls all the activities of a cell, and then we have a certain other region in here that is called a vacuole. Vacuoles in plant cells are large and permanent, and this is where you find dissolved substances like salts and other substances that the plant gets from the soil. And then you can see that the vacuole is enclosed by a membrane, and that membrane is called chloroplast. And then there's a space here just outside the chloroplast in which you see various structures, and this particular space is called cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, you have various structures of a cell suspended. For example, a mitochondria, you can see this particular shape here. We have another shape here. This one appears green. This one is called a chloroplast. This one I've said is called a mitochondria. And then we have the nucleus also suspended in the cytoplasm, and also many other structures. These structures are called organelles. So a plant cell will have the outermost important part called a cell wall, and a cell wall is made up of cellulose. Cellulose is a carbohydrate that is very tough. The cell wall is absent in animal cells, and the function of the cell wall is to give a plant cell the rigidity it normally has and the strength. If you look at a plant, it will stand erect and it is therefore because of cell wall. That is one of the reasons. There are also many other reasons, but the cell wall is the most basic. And because the cell wall is tough, the other function is to protect the internal structures from mechanical damage. So it will also give it a specific shape. So a plant cell having a cell wall, this particular cell wall is said to be freely permeable. Freely permeable means that all substances can get in and out of this particular cell, no matter the size, no matter the substance. The next neighboring membrane is called a cell membrane. The difference between a cell membrane and a cell wall is that a cell wall is freely permeable, but a cell membrane is semi-permeable. Semi-permeable meaning it selects the substances that gets in and the substances that gets out. So actually you can see here the cell membrane just comes immediately after the cell wall, and the cell membrane is selectively permeable. Unlike the cell wall, which is freely permeable, the cell membrane will only allow some substances to get in to the cell. It will not allow all of them. So the cell membrane, as you can see, it lies just immediately the cell wall, and it is made up of lipids. The other names of a cell membrane is plasma lemma or plasma membrane. It is a very important structure, especially in the topic of cell physiology that we shall look at later. So the function is normally to control the movement of materials in and out of a cell. Because you have said that it is semi-permeable, not all substances will be able to get in and out of any particular cell. Then in the same cell, there is a cytoplasm. You've seen where we mentioned it. The cytoplasm will contain all the suspended organelles like the chloroplast, like the mitochondria, like the nucleus, and so many other substances in it. They normally say that it is jelly-like substance, and it contains organelles and other granules that carry in other substances. So those structures that are found in the cytoplasm of these particular cells are so many, and they vary in size, and most of them, or at least all, they are not been able to be seen by an a light microscope. They cannot be seen under electron microscope, and they all have specific function. So the first one in plant cell is chloroplast. The function of chloroplast is to store chlorophyll. It is to store chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green coloring matter, and therefore for this reason the main function of chloroplast is site for photosynthesis. This is where photosynthesis takes place. This is where the plant cell manufactures its own food. So the pigment gives the plant their color, and this pigment is green and is responsible for trapping light energy and converting that energy to chemical energy that they later use to carry out photosynthesis. There is also a mitochondria. We have mitochondria, as you can see here. One of it, a single one, is called mitochondrion. but major or in plural it's called mitochondria. This is the site for energy synthesis. The energy in all cells comes from this particular organelle called mitochondria. We have another structure that is called a vacuole. A vacuole is at the center of the cell. It is normally very large, and it is normally surrounded by chloroplast, as we had said earlier. So this one will contain substances that are dissolved in water found in it, and we call it cell sap. If you take a leaf and squeeze it, it will produce some fluid like substance. That one is simply sap, and most of it comes from the cell sap of these particular cells. So in this solution there are so many chemicals, and these chemicals are normally responsible for maintaining the osmotic balance of a cell. Osmotic balance is a term that we're going to study in the next topic called cell physiology. Then there is a nucleus, and nucleus, as we said earlier, it controls all the activities of the cell. So the nucleus is normally surrounded by a membrane called a nuclear membrane. And one thing that you should know is that all membranes in all particular cells and all organelles, they have a similar structure. They are made up of lipids. So the nucleus will contain chromosomes, and chromosomes determine the characteristics that a parent will pass to the generations. For example, if a plant produces yellow flowers, the chromosomes inside the nucleus will copy that information to the seed of the next plant, and therefore the next plant in the next future will always produce yellow flowers, not unless something happens like the plant evolves, or maybe there's a problem with the genetic makeup of that particular plant. So the different kind of plant cells are as follows. We have the onion epidermal cells, we have the guard cells. These ones, they are very specific. They are found on the leaf. They normally have what we call the stoma in between this particular region. Then you have the root hair. If you put a root, you are able to see some thin filament like structures. And we also have others which are very thin that you cannot be able to see with the naked eye, and they are called root hair. Their work is to absorb water and mineral salts for the plant. So in our next video we are going to look at an animal cell, and this is a generalized structure. We look at how the cell is organized, right from the cell membrane, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and also the organelles that are there, like this one, mitochondria, and all their functions that they normally carry out.